If you're a widow or widower, or you're caring for one, I need you to stay with me for the next several minutes. Because right now, in 2026, there's a documented surge in scam messages specifically targeting people receiving Social Security. And the federal government has confirmed this is happening at a scale they describe as significant. I'm Linda Foster, and I want to show you exactly what these messages look like, why they're working on people who would normally never fall for something like this, and specifically why widows and widowers are often targeted with a slightly different version of these scams than other Social Security recipients. Let me start with something the Social Security Administration's own Office of the Inspector General said publicly this year. They issued a warning about a sharp increase in fraudulent emails designed to look like official Social Security communications, specifically ones claiming to give you access to your Social Security statement. The Assistant Inspector General was direct about it. These messages are not from Social Security. Anyone who receives one should delete it immediately and report it. Here's the scale we're talking about. In 2025, the Federal Trade Commission recorded a 25% increase in government impersonation scams compared to the previous year, with total complaints topping 330,000. Social Security remains one of the most frequently impersonated agencies in the country, and within that broader pattern, there's a specific version of this fraud that targets people navigating survivor benefits, precisely because that's a moment of genuine financial complexity and emotional vulnerability that scammers have learned to exploit. Let me walk through how this works, starting with the general pattern, and then I want to spend real time on the survivor-specific version, because I don't think it gets covered nearly often enough. The general scam follows a consistent shape, regardless of which specific story it tells. Someone contacts you by phone, text, or email, claiming to be from Social Security or a related government office. They tell you there's a problem, your number has been suspended, there's an issue with your benefits, your information has been compromised, or they tell you there's a prize, some unexpected amount you're owed. They create urgency, pressuring you to act immediately. And eventually, they ask for either personal information or payment. Here's the rule that protects you against every single version. Social Security will never call you and threaten to suspend your Social Security number. They will never demand immediate payment over the phone. And they will never ask you to pay using gift cards, prepaid debit cards, wire transfers, cryptocurrency, cash, or even gold bars. Yes, scammers have actually started asking victims to convert money into gold, specifically because it's harder to trace than a bank transfer. If anyone asks for payment in any of these forms, connected to Social Security in any way, you are speaking with a criminal. Now let me address the version that specifically targets widows and widowers, because the emotional dynamics here are different from a generic scam, and understanding why makes you considerably harder to fool. When a spouse passes away, the surviving spouse often needs to interact with Social Security for the first time in years, sometimes for the first time ever if their spouse always handled this side of their finances. This creates a specific kind of vulnerability. Genuine uncertainty about what paperwork is needed, genuine unfamiliarity with how survivor benefits work, and often genuine grief that makes careful, skeptical thinking harder than it would be on an ordinary day. Scammers know this, and some specifically craft messages that exploit it. A common version claims there's an issue with processing your survivor benefit claim, or that additional information is urgently needed to prevent a delay or denial. The message might reference your spouse by name, sometimes pulled from publicly available obituary information, which makes it feel disturbingly personal and therefore more credible. It will typically include a deadline and a link, asking you to verify information or complete a step before your claim can proceed. Here's what I want every widow and widower to know clearly. If you've genuinely filed for survivor benefits, any legitimate follow-up from Social Security will never arrive as an unsolicited text or email asking you to click a link to verify your information. If the SSA needs additional documentation from you, this happens through your existing claim. Through correspondence you can verify by calling the same number you've already been using to handle your claim, or by logging into your own My Social Security account directly at ssa.gov, never through a link sent to you. I also want to address a specific variation that's emerged around the genuinely real benefits I've discussed before. The Social Security Fairness Act corrections that affected widows and widowers whose survivor benefits had been reduced or eliminated by the old government pension offset rules. Because this was real, widely covered news, scammers built fake versions of it. Messages claiming you're owed a retroactive payment under the Fairness Act, asking you to verify your bank details to receive it, or claiming a small processing fee is required before your payment can be released. The genuine Fairness Act payments were processed automatically by the SSA for the vast majority of affected people, with no fee required and no need to click any link to claim them. If you're contacted about this specifically, asking for bank verification or any payment to release funds you're supposedly owed, that's fraudulent, regardless of how real the underlying legislation happens to be. This is exactly the pattern the SSA's own Office of the Inspector General has named, what they call the 4 Ps. Pretend, where the scammer claims to represent Social Security or a related office. Prize or problem, where they tell you either something's wrong or something good is owed to you. Pressure, the urgency that pushes you to act before you'd normally have time to think it through carefully. And payment, where eventually they ask for money or information that leads to money being taken. Pretend, prize or problem, pressure, payment. Once you know this pattern, you'll start recognizing it across every version of this fraud, including the ones specifically aimed at survivor benefits. So here's what I want you to actually do. If you receive a suspicious call, text, or email claiming to be about your Social Security or survivor benefits, do not click any link, do not call any number included in the message, and do not respond. Instead, go directly to ssa.gov yourself, or call the number you already know is correct, 1-800-772-1213, to check independently whether anything genuine is actually happening with your account or your claim. You can also check directly at ssa.gov/myaccount. Report what you received. The SSA's Office of the Inspector General has a dedicated reporting page at oig.ssa.gov/report. You can also file with the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center at ic3.gov and separately with the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov. If you've already shared information or sent money, stop all contact with the suspected scammer immediately. Contact your bank right away to protect your accounts, and report the incident through all 3 channels I just described. If actual money has been lost, contact local law enforcement as well. I want to address something specifically for anyone who's recently lost a spouse and feels like they're already overwhelmed managing new financial responsibilities for the first time. You are allowed to slow down. Nothing about a genuine survivor benefit claim requires the kind of urgent, immediate action that scam messages try to create. If a message about your benefits creates a feeling of panic or pressure, that feeling itself is information. It's telling you to stop and verify independently, not to act faster. I also want to mention something for anyone supporting a recently widowed parent or family member through this process. One of the most protective things you can do isn't installing software or setting up call screening, although those help too. It's simply being available as the person they call before clicking anything, before responding to anything, whenever a message arrives that claims to be about Social Security or survivor benefits. Knowing there's someone to check with, without feeling like they're being treated as incapable, removes a tremendous amount of the pressure these scams rely on. Let me close with something genuinely important. You are never required to respond immediately to any message about your Social Security or survivor benefits, no matter what it claims, no matter how official it looks, no matter how specific or personal the details seem. Real communications about real issues with your benefits do not require split-second responses. If something is pushing you to skip the step of verifying independently, that pressure is the warning sign, not a reason to comply faster. If this was useful, please share it with a widow or widower in your life, or with anyone who's recently navigated a survivor benefit claim. A single conversation about the 4 Ps and the simple fact that Social Security never demands urgent payment or verification through an unsolicited link could be the difference between a stranger's attempted scam going nowhere and a genuinely painful loss during an already difficult time. Let me go deeper into a few specific aspects of how these scams work, because the more detail you understand, the harder you become for these criminals to fool. I want to address the obituary research issue specifically, because it's genuinely unsettling and worth understanding clearly. Scammers, particularly more organized criminal operations, sometimes actively monitor published obituaries, specifically to identify recently widowed people. An obituary provides a name, a date of death, sometimes a surviving spouse's name, and occasionally even details about where the deceased worked or lived. All useful information for crafting a more convincing scam message. This is exactly why a scam targeting a recent widow can feel disturbingly personal. It sometimes is, in the narrow sense that real information about your specific situation has been gathered deliberately. I want to be clear that this doesn't make the message any more legitimate. Having accurate details about your spouse's passing tells you nothing about whether a message claiming to be from Social Security is genuine. The only thing that confirms legitimacy is verifying independently through a phone number or website you already know is correct, never through anything provided in the suspicious message itself. I also want to address something about how the genuine survivor benefit claims process actually works, since understanding the real process makes it considerably easier to spot when something doesn't match it. When you file for survivor benefits, whether by phone, online, or in person, you're assigned to a specific claim that the SSA processes according to standard timelines. If additional documentation is genuinely needed, a death certificate, a marriage certificate, proof of your relationship, the SSA will request this through correspondence connected to your existing claim, or you'll be told what's needed during your initial filing conversation. They do not send unsolicited follow-up texts or emails demanding you click a link to provide this information after the fact. If you're ever uncertain whether something is missing from your claim, the correct response is to call 1-800-772-1213 yourself and ask directly about your claim status, not to respond to any message that arrives claiming there's an urgent issue. Let me also mention something specific about the lump sum death payment, because scammers occasionally reference this real, genuine benefit to add credibility to fake messages. There is a real, one-time payment of $255 available to an eligible surviving spouse in certain circumstances. Because this is real and relatively well known, scam messages sometimes specifically reference it, claiming you need to verify your bank details or pay a processing fee to receive it. The genuine lump sum payment requires no fee, and Social Security will never ask you to verify bank details through a text or email link in order to release it. If you haven't yet claimed this payment and believe you're eligible, the correct path is to ask about it directly when speaking with Social Security through a number you verified yourself, not through any link or callback number provided in an unsolicited message. I want to spend some time on a related issue that affects a specific group within the widowed population: people who are also navigating a deceased spouse's other accounts, like pensions, life insurance, or bank accounts, around the same time they're dealing with Social Security. Scammers sometimes run coordinated campaigns that reference multiple aspects of this process simultaneously, hoping that the sheer volume of legitimate paperwork you're already managing makes one more form, one more verification request, blend in without raising suspicion. If you're in this situation, juggling multiple institutions and multiple sets of documentation at once, it's worth deliberately slowing down, specifically because of how easy it becomes to lose track of what's genuinely required versus what's an opportunistic scam riding alongside everything else. I also want to address something for anyone who's received a scam message and feels embarrassed or foolish for having almost responded to it, or for having actually clicked a link before recognizing what it was. These campaigns are professionally designed, specifically engineered by people who study exactly what makes messages feel credible and urgent. Falling for the early stages of one of these scams, or nearly falling for it, is not a reflection of anything about your judgment or capability. It's a reflection of how sophisticated these criminal operations have become. If anything has happened, reporting it immediately matters far more than feeling embarrassed about it. Every report helps investigators identify patterns and shut down the networks running these campaigns. Let me close with one more practical piece of advice specifically for widows and widowers managing this process largely on their own. Consider designating one trusted person, an adult child, a sibling, a close friend, as someone you'll call before responding to any unexpected message about your Social Security, survivor benefits, or any related financial matter. This isn't about questioning your own capability. It's simply recognizing that having a second perspective, particularly during a period when you're managing genuinely unfamiliar paperwork for the first time, removes a significant amount of the pressure that scammers depend on to work. The single habit that defeats nearly every version of this fraud is refusing to let any unexpected message dictate your timeline. Real issues with your Social Security or survivor benefits do not require an immediate response measured in minutes or hours. If something is pushing you to act faster than feels comfortable, that pressure itself is the clearest signal something is wrong. If this was useful, please share it with a widow or widower in your life, or with anyone supporting someone through this process. The 4 Ps and the simple fact that Social Security never demands urgent payment or verification through an unsolicited link are worth discussing directly with anyone who might encounter one of these messages without yet knowing the pattern. I'll see you in the next one.